Yeah. Sound good to me. This sound hard, something funky people gon' dance to. Give the record a second and a chance to. Hitting people like a scene of amazement. While they slipping back, my feet just planted in the pavement. Crumble I can never do. So now I'm looking dead at you. What are you gonna do? You listen to the knowledge of a scholar. You say how I breathe, tell them how I holler. I'm the E-double, and I proclaim my name. Straight up, good gang, peeps all game. I'm like a rhino, running through the roughest pack. They figure I'm a trigger happy nigga, so they step back. Breathe. The microphone is who lasts the longest and who's the strongest. It ain't a game, it's plain to see. You listen to the sounds of breathe. There ain't no future in your front. I never got caught with a kilo, and if you ever do, yo, and ever be with me, yo, serve it in the Cherokee, or maybe it's a Geo. Black on black benzo, we'll get it up, amigo. Never.
Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 561 of the Orange Pill Investor. And I would just also like to say that I have never been caught with a kilo, and if you ever do, it will never be with me, yo. Unfortunately, with the AI deepfakes, I think that Mr. Breed was wrong, and there is a serious future in fronting. The future is nothing but fronting, apparently, and it pisses me off a little bit because every time I'm doom scrolling videos and I see something cool and I'm like, but is it fucking fake? And it kind of starts pissing me off a little bit. However, the topic of the day that I want to talk about is like, what is a pleb? And Hodalanot has been going after the core peeps for their change in philosophy from being, anti-spam to cozying up with spammers. But my buddy Ben actually posed the question, like, what is a pleb? And it's kind of funny because it almost sounds like when Matt Walsh came out with what is a woman. And it seems like this should be an obvious question that we don't need to talk about. But it kind of is necessary because people are like, oh, the plebs this, the plebs that, or who was the dickhead that was saying plebs don't matter? Anyway. And so I think this is pretty reasonable here, what he's talking about. Node runners are plebs, miners are plebs. Devs, we'll come back to devs a little bit. Users are plebs. And for me, it kind of goes back to the we are all Satoshi thing. Like, we're all plebs as long as you're not like against the plebs. And that's kind of the point, is that the point of solving the Byzantine generals problem is to turn everyone into a pleb, or you could just say it the other way, turn everyone into a general. So we're all sovereign. And now it's not supposed to be class warfare anymore when Bitcoin takes over. Everyone has a voice. It's like an actual real democracy. But we got to come back to devs a little bit here, because when a pleb decides that he's going to also be a developer, now he's directing the protocol. And what is required are the node runners to keep the devs in check. Because what we've had with Core is they've started to cater to parasites, might even be parasites, and are trying to sabotage Bitcoin from the inside. And it's up to the nodes, it's up to the plebs to route around bad actors. And, calling Core the reference implementation is a centralizing philosophy. And so we needed knots to challenge them. Yes, were mempool filters probably just amounted mostly to virtue signaling? Maybe. But now Dathan Ohm is moving that to the consensus layer. And it's up to the node runners to decide, hey, are we going to require parasites to exit the network? Miners can contribute, right? They can advance this adoption if they figure this shit out early. So it's a BIP 110 is a user activated soft fork that miners, it can also be a miner activated soft fork. So if the miners decide, oh shit, we don't want to be the last one holding the short end of the stick, we can adopt it early. But at some point, the nodes are in charge. And it's the node's responsibility to keep the devs in check and the miners in check. I considered myself a Bitcoin maxi for quite a long time, and all I did was stack sats. I was only a user. But with this debate, I think at some point, if you can run a node, you should. And it's almost kind of like, are you going to custody your Bitcoin on the exchange, or are you going to take self-custody? That's kind of like an extension to this. You can stack sats and you can self-custody them, but if you're not running a node, then you can't validate your own transaction and you can't contribute to regulating the developers in case they go rogue, like what I believe has happened with Core. And they've either been willing participants in this attack or unable to stop it. So it really doesn't matter which of those two. You can be a little bit kinder to them and just say that they're not evil, they're incompetent or lazy, but it really doesn't really matter to me what the reasons for their failures are. It's up to the node runners to decide for themselves. And like people like to go back and forth and say, you don't get to decide for Bitcoin. Like Bitcoiners get to decide, like everyone gets to decide. And that's, I don't know. That seems just like people talking past each other, because the only reason that I know for a fact, 100%, that Bitcoin will succeed is because I'm not going to let it fail. So my assumption is that everyone else feels the exact same way that I do. Everyone else is not going to let Bitcoin fail in their own self-interest. And so BIP 110 will fail or succeed. And if this isn't the solution to stop the spam problem, we'll come up with something else. There will be some other developer with a good idea. Dan said something funny about, with the ability of AI now, like every person on the planet is basically just an idea guy. And you can just use AI to tell it what, you come up with an idea. Hey, AI, go implement this cool idea that I have. And the meme was something like, your entire company is like senior idea guy, mid-level management idea guy, guy who gets lunch and coffee, and then like more idea guys. It was pretty cool. But yeah, and so I responded to this with some references to Frederick Bastiat and his, it's not really a book. If it's a book, it's really short. I think it's more of an essay. It's called The Law. And I think that, what is a pleb might be a negative concept more than a positive. And I don't mean negative as being bad. What I mean is negative in that the way that Bastiat was describing justice is the absence of injustice. So like if somebody gets killed, you can't really restore justice, right? You can put someone in prison, you can sue them in civil court for damages, but you can't restore life to that person. So the only way for justice to exist is for injustice to be absent. And that might be the best way to describe like what what is a pleb. So plebs are not going to be attacking Bitcoin. And as far as Jeff Booth is concerned, Bitcoin wins if it remains decentralized and secure. So plebs are not attacking decentralization. They are supporting it. They are not attacking security. They are supporting it. Yeah, it's kind of like another, I don't know. I'm not a constitutionalist necessarily anymore, because I don't think it's done a very good job of safeguarding people's rights. But the principle in there of like, here's the rights that we're going to reserve, or we're going to say are I guess allowed to be entertained, or here are the abilities that the federal government is going to be able to do, and then the states reserve all of their rights. And that's kind of like the way that I look at this. There's no one way to do pleb shit, but there are a handful of ways that disqualify you from pleb philosophy, and everything else is on the table. You could almost, I don't know if I want to talk about morality with this, but we know that there are a few things that are bad or immoral, but there's plenty of things that, as long as they're not immoral, they're fine and dandy. But it doesn't necessarily make them moral or immoral too, right? There can just be things that are just whatever. If somebody's favorite color is red and another person's favorite color is green, there's no moral or immorality to that judgment. It's just it's just a matter of personal preference. But yeah, as long as it's not an immoral behavior, it's cool. But just because it's not immoral, it doesn't make it moral. Anyway, that was probably a tangent that I didn't need to go down. But I can't stop thinking about, there's a book called Morality, Its Nature and Justification. God, I can't remember that guy's name. But it's probably one of the most boring reads ever in history. But it's got a framework for how to think about rational morality, which is a little bit different from objective morality. And I don't know. I think it's got some applications here. So, go do pleb shit, and don't do anti-pleb shit. I guess that's the point. What's up, Dana? Mr. OP episodes. The pen is blue. Alrighty. So with that being said, I'm not gonna belabor this point. Let's get down to business. And just a reminder, there will be no fronting on the orange pill investor. We don't do that here. All right. So Cypher kind of dipping a little bit. So I'll just have to sit on this and hope that it stays above 13. And at some point, I'll be able to roll this for a credit. And keep in mind, too, if earnings, I wasn't even really paying attention, but if earnings were last week and you can still get these type of premiums, like in a lot of companies, when earnings happens, implied vol just collapses and you really can't get much premium. But because Bitcoin derivatives are built on top of Bitcoin, they inherit Bitcoin's volatility. And it just seems like the market doesn't give a shit that Cypher just had earnings and it's like, oh, now we can go back to a low implied vol environment, which 21 is pretty low IV rank. But if I was to sell a 1 week cash secured put at the money, I would put up $1,600 and collect 80. And that's pretty ridiculous. So that's that's a 5% return on capital for 1 week. You put up 1,600, you collect 80. 80 divided by 1,600 is 5%, I believe. So does that mean that Cypher, can't crash to $10 a share and you lose, $600 on that transaction? No, your break-even price is going to be like 15, 20 or something on that. So it's not saying like this is guaranteed to make money, but the point is kind of like, even after earnings, when implied vol is supposed to crash, there's a ton of premiums to be had in these Bitcoin derivatives. Doesn't mean that there's no risk. The risk is always present in the stock market or in anything really. And actually, since there's no fronting allowed here, I do have to admit something. So my whole thing when I pivoted to just being Bitcoin maxi is that I only own stocks that are Bitcoin derivatives. So we've got Strategy, we've got Tesla, they own a bunch of Bitcoin, we've got mining stocks, but silver is so tempting. And let's just take a look. Back when I first started and I would just trade anything that had premiums, holy shit, the IV rank on this is 96. You can actually trade silver 3 times a week, so this is ridiculous. But I also trade on my wife's account on her behalf. And so I couldn't help myself. I sold I went out to 42 days to expiration, I think. And I think I sold like the 65 for like $3. And it's kind of crazy. This is the implied vol chart for SLV. It's just the implied vol just went through the roof because silver was at 100 and something, right? Let's check the chart. Silver was at 100. Let's see, what was the high? Well, this just says the high was 92. Maybe that's the paper price. No, there we go, 106. I'm pretty sure it was over 100. And so, look, these numbers, there are certain strikes and numbers that have huge psychological effects. And like when silver, went above 90, it was like almost 100% chance like that it was going to go to 100. Like stocks just love to pump from 90 to 100. And then everyone on the fucking planet has a sell order at 100 or 105 or something, right? So it's really no surprise that this 109 went to 109, and then there's a bunch of profit taking here. But now the 100, the 3-digit ceiling on silver has been broken. So, will silver probably consolidate again and then push 100 and then make 100 the floor, and then we're in fucking price discovery again? And like, how high will it go? I don't know. Probably the next psychological ceiling is 200. Howard Wetzman said something like probably between 2 and 5 or 200 and 600 before all the paper unwinds and we can actually figure out how much silver is supposed to be worth as a precious metal and not just like manipulation and financial engineering. So I'm not making any type of predictions. I don't know jack shit about silver. I just look at the implied vol and start salivating. And so I took this one single solitary little teeny tiny position because I was just jonesing. I couldn't ignore the IV rank on this thing. And but I did it on her account, so it doesn't count. But yeah, I mean, super, super tiny position. And I put like, I set it up. So I sold it for like $300. And then I set my automatic close order for like 150, right? At 50% profit. And I did that once before on her account. I can't remember which strike I sold, but I came back a couple of weeks later and it had already closed at a profit. So, uh, I'm in my accounts. I've sworn a solemn oath not to trade anything that's not a Bitcoin, based equity. But I kind of cheated and used her account to take a little tiny silver position. I just couldn't help myself but to join in on the fun. So, and silver is crazy because you can trade it actually 3 times a week. And so I was just saying that with Cypher, you can, what did I say? You can get like 5% on a week, but selling a cash secured put because of this 20% drop in price, that's um, pumped the implied vol. Like a 3-day cash secured put pays $4. That's 5%. No, sorry. Um, yeah. All right. 5 times 8 is 40. Yeah. So this is a 5% return for 3 days. It's not even a full trading week, um, which is kind of stupid. Now, this doesn't mean, again, that silver won't crash to 50 and then you'd be forced to buy silver at 80 and now it's only worth 50. Of course, that shit's all on the table. And the calculation for expected move is actually, anywhere from 72 to freaking 88. So, um, this is all still risky business, right? But I don't know. My old degen implied vol whore days are resurfacing. All right, we got the chats running here. Dana says I'm plebbing out. What's up, Dano? Just popping to say howdy, my dude, and happy Friday. Thanks, appreciate it. Happy Friday back to you. Got to get back to work. This True North Vegas event ain't gonna plan itself. Yeah, man. You guys just don't have any idea what kind of sweat is going on in the background. Yeah, I do get distracted by the chat. Makes me feel loved. Tesla going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. Holy merger rumor, Batman. Yeah, and that I hate to even. On one hand, I would kind of like to be able to invest in XAI and SpaceX and shit like that myself. So in one sense, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But in another sense, I would rather that they just bought more Bitcoin. Like buying a stake in these other companies, it's cool. But and with XAI, you can at least say that there's some synergies. A lot of times companies want to do mergers and they claim that there's synergies and, oh, we're going to be able to do this and do that. But really the only synergy is that you can just fire half of the employees because now you've got one central HR department. You can just dump half the managers and put a bunch of people up under another bunch of people. I used to work on Cerner applications, and they got bought out by Oracle. And man, Cerner's customer support went into the toilet after they got bought by Oracle. They probably ended up being more efficient in the long run. But something like Tesla has real synergy with XAI because they're going to be able to use the LLM in their Optimus robots, right? You want to just be able to talk to the damn robot and tell it to go fold the laundry and I don't know, have a conversation about Bitcoin and politics and shit while you're at it. So there is some good to that. Will they just keep merging and adopting stuff? I don't know. I don't know what will be the point of merging with SpaceX would be necessarily, except that I think Tesla's going to start printing their own. I think they were saying that they're going to end up making more chips than Nvidia, which is kind of sick. But they'll probably have data centers fucking floating around in space and shit like that. You don't have to worry about overheating, and you can probably collect solar power, and there's going to be a bunch of cool shit on the horizon. But I don't know how I feel about just merge kind of stuff. That might be a little bit of the overhang with the price since earnings. Like it pumped briefly and then was like, okay. A lot of times the market doesn't really like those types of things because they do take a while to demonstrate that they're, for lack of a better word, accretive, I suppose. But yeah, long term, it's definitely bullish. Buffalo silver's kind of like iBit. That isn't the dollar price. Silver was at 118. Yeah, no shit, 118. I only watch silver because my mom has like 600 physical ounces. I've been telling her to sell. Yeah, I met with a guy, basically a friend of a friend, and he wanted to talk about Bitcoin. And this guy's got a bunch of metal, and I don't have any predictions about when he should sell. The only thing I told him was to make a plan, right? So if you want to ladder your position, there was a penny stock trader that I used to follow named Quick Fingers Luke. I think his channel's gone, but one of the things that he said was you always have to participate in the bounce, meaning you always have to take some profits. So when something rallies, you have to take some meaningful amount of profit, and it can just be whatever percent you think is meaningful. It can be 1%, it could be 5%, it could be 10, it could be 20, it could be 50, whatever. But my advice was for him to make a plan, because when your stock is running, it's too emotional to decide in the moment. Because if silver, runs to 150, you're going to be like hyperventilating. Like, is it going to go to 200 or is it going to crash back to 100? And there's just no way in the moment to handle it. And so when silver's at whatever it is, 80 now is the time when you have to plan. What am I going to do when it goes to 125? What am I going to do when it goes to 150? What am I going to do when it goes to 300 or 500 or whatever? And, plan. Am I going to ladder out a percent here, a percent there? I know it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass with physical, because it's like, okay, am I going to go down to the shop? I have to drive down to the shop once a month, or, keep an eye on it and all of that good shit, which is kind of another reason why we Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin crashing on a Sunday night is a feature, not a bug, because if you're spooked about the economic environment, and is Trump going to start another tariff war, or World War III is coming or whatever, if you want to sell on a Sunday night, you can with Bitcoin, right? You're not stuck like, oh shit, I have to wait for the silver shop to open and drive down there and haggle with the fucking guy. And, maybe he wants your coins, or he only wants eagles, or just whatever bullshit you don't have to deal with. Liquidity, exit liquidity is an important factor here. Appreciate that, Dana. Let's see. Have a plan. We decided to trade 1 ounce of gold for a sauna. Yeah, man. And that's kind of the whole point of Bitcoin, is like, the whole point isn't to like stack sats like a monk and just die on a pile of Bitcoin. And like, what story did I hear? I think there were monks back in the freaking dark ages that would literally put ashes from the fire in their food so that they didn't even enjoy any worldly pleasures. And like that's not a life that I'm interested in, right? It's just stacking sats forever, living like a monk, and here you go, my kids. Here's a big pile of Bitcoin. You go enjoy it. But if they followed my example, then they would just live like a monk and not enjoy life and give the Bitcoin stack to their kids. And it's like, okay, well, what's the point? Isn't the whole point like I want my kids to have a good life? So doesn't that remind me that my parents wanted me to have a good life? And so, stacking sats, the whole point is so that you can hide your money under the mattress and it not be devalued. And when you've stacked enough to afford the sauna, then you buy it and you live longer and you live happier and all of that good shit. So sounds like you're doing it right. Religion is a cult. Yeah. I tend to agree with you, but I'm starting to sympathize. Starting to sympathize more than I used to. All right. So let's keep it moving. Sitting on that, letting theta do its thing. All right, Tesla, we just had earnings, so I put these back on. And of course, the price is coming back, and now it's worth more than I sold it for. But that's just how it is. So I'll be watching this over the next 3 weeks and looking for a place to roll this for a credit as per usual. And I think, and I must have been on a spending spree because I cannot keep up with this margin use. I keep trying to chip away at it, but every time I make $1, I spend $1.50. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. The strategy 150s that I sold are worth not much. So let me have to share without volume. All right, so let's close these bad boys. Kept almost all of that. And there's not much left in these 185s. But I'm gonna take these off on February 5th before the earnings call anyway. So there's no sense in me rolling these out to 45 days and then just after 1 week, closing them, because I'd be getting a credit and then I'd just be giving most of that back. So I'm just gonna hold on to this. However, I will take the other 5 and roll them out to next week, which is the 6th, and I'll just take them off a day early. So let's go to just outside the expected move, 5 of them. There we go. So all of 2025, I was trying to sell short-term premium and then use that money to take longer positions, leverage long positions. Almost none of it worked in 2025. So I've been trying to do that a little bit in 2026. So I started adding a few of these little, attack the tail type of positions, but keeping them pretty small just because at this point, in order to keep the lights on and pay my bills, I'm having to use the majority of my premium that I'm collecting really just to fund my lifestyle at this point. So I'm being very cautious about entering into these positions because if Bitcoin doesn't do what I want it to do because it doesn't really care about my feelings. Like, we are testing support at 80. And if we crack materially below 80, the next support level is like, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 70 in this range. I'm not really a TA person besides, drawing a support and resistance line. Where did my 250-day moving average go? I thought I used to have those. Regardless, I think somebody was posting that technically we're in a bear market now. I think we just had a death cross. Yeah, my moving averages are gone for some reason. I don't know why. Regardless, Bitcoin can just do whatever it wants to do. We know it's going up forever in the long term, but 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, it's anybody's guess. So if Bitcoin were to see 50K again, that's like a third of the price. That means strategy's pushing $100. I would assume there's a pretty heavy bid at 100. But I mean, we're every day that goes by, we're achieving new 52-week lows. So really, to even, we want Bitcoin to go to 130 so we can get price discovery. But we're like, for strategy is concerned, we're price discovering in the opposite direction. And we're actually below, we're actually below the all-time highs from 2024. So that's brutal. But yeah, I would think somewhere between 100 and 125, there would be some heavy buying. But yeah, I mean, we could totally see 100 again if Bitcoin goes to 50. Or maybe even worse, maybe strategy gets hammered even harder. I think that would be pretty hard. I don't know what the price would be at 50K Bitcoin at 1 MNAV. The good news is that no matter what happens, strategy is going to keep buying Bitcoin. So that floor does keep getting higher and higher. But if half of my entire portfolio just dropped suddenly by a 30%, that would suck. That would suck real bad, especially since the past year, it's already crashed. From 500 to 150, it's already crashed 2/3. So yeah, scary things to think about. But again, it's just like having a plan. If you own silver, what am I going to do when it goes to 150 or 2 or 3 or 5? Same thing for, Bitcoin or strategy. What am I going to do when strategy goes to 125 or 115 or 100? I executed that plan all through 2025, but just like they say that the market can stay irrational longer than you can remain solvent, I had a plan down to about 125. So, yeah, if we were to go even lower than that, I would be pressed. Which is kind of makes me a little bit more sleep a little bit better at night that I moved half of this position over to Tesla. Now, if the whole market tanks and, Tesla drops to 300 at the same time strategy drops to 100, then I'm just fucked on top of fucked. But as long as I can weather that storm, however long that lasts, I guess everything is fine, and I don't have to tuck my tail between my legs and go back to work and polish off my resume. But yeah, you should always kind of like plan, okay, what if the stocks crashes however much you reasonably think it could crash, and then like double that. If you think something could crash 30%, then your plan should probably include it crashing 60%. And then even be ready for that to be to underestimate. I think when I made after I started trading options, I made a bunch of money as Tesla pushed to $400 a share, and I rode that all the way back down from 400 to 100, and that was pretty painful as well. So it can happen. Both says I'm down 17 to 17K margin from 80 a year ago. Feels good, but I sold more puts recently that are now in the money. Whoops. Yeah, I know. Even selling them like 20, 30% of the money, you're like, oh, that's safe. And like, oh, maybe not. So yeah, my plan for next week, I'll probably take off at least half of these cash secured puts unless the price, just in case the price crashes again. Yeah, like this 150, I thought, oh, well, the price was 180, and all right, I'll sell the 150 cash secured put. This damn thing's in the money. So this seemed like a no-brainer, but after 17 days, it's in the money, unfortunately. Yeah, I might have to take off like half of these bad boys just to make sure that I don't have too much risk. What did I do? I rolled this. Where's the covered call? Should be around 175. Here it is. Yeah, there we go. Our Tesla's good. Strategy is all set. On the 5th, I will take off all of these and like half of the cash secured puts. I think I'm a little too heavy on margin use right about now. All right, the IRA. I really got to get working on a backdoor Roth. I hate the idea of having this money locked up. So I need to figure that out. Iron is like the only thing that's going well. My covered call's in the money. And the way that I decide whether I'm going to keep this or close it is calculate if there's extrinsic value left to collect. Normally I would have rolled this around the 20-day mark, but if I subtract 48 from 53, that's $5.30. Subtract that from its current price, that leaves you with like $5. That means there's $400 or $500 worth of extrinsic value that I can collect if I simply do nothing. Because at 0 DTE, the value of an in-the-money option is equal to the distance between the price and the strike. So if this was February 13th at 3:59 p.m. and there was no time value left, all the extrinsic value is gone, this option would be worth $500. 53 minus 48. And so the remaining $450 is all extrinsic. And over the next 2 weeks, if I do nothing, I will basically be able to pay $4.50 less for this option if I wait, which is a little over $200 a week, which is like 5% returns on a 4% returns, 4% weekly returns on a $5,000 position. So I'm in no hurry to roll this. Like I could try to go out to close to 45 days. But the only way that I could roll it out of the money would be like for a small debit. And I would just try to avoid that if I can. Now, if I needed this $5,000 in order to, actually $4,000, right? to fund something else, then sure, it would make sense to close this early. But for now, I try not to panic roll these things, and so I'll just be sitting on it. Tesla I just put back on, nothing to do with sit and wait. I think I spent all my, yeah. I ended up collecting some dry powder, and instead of taking a new position, I went ahead and just stacked some SATA, and I think I got it in before the ex-dividend date, so I got paid like 1% here, which is like 90 cents, which means I'm still down on that position. I need SATA to pump back up to like 95.10 in order to recoup. But if they're able to pump this back up to 100, then this position should be fine. And it's still technically dry powder. Like SATA would have to really, really, really collapse to make this like not work out. But again, does it make more sense to take this $1,500 and sell a cash secured put in a mining stock that costs around that much? Probably. So I may just go ahead and do that and just take my lumps and say, okay, I lost. Well, I'm going to get paid. Am I going to get paid like 11, 12 cents on a dollar? So yeah, this is probably going to be like a break even thing. It's real. Maybe it's a teeny tiny loss. Not a big deal. But same for strategy. So I will take off these two positions. Oh no, not these two positions. I forgot to ungroup this and regroup. Here we go. I'll take off these two positions next week, but I generally don't take off my poor man's covered call positions. If the price runs up and I'm forced to sell this, I'm totally fine with that. It's a perfect excuse for me to de-lever the position. All right, so let me look and see. I don't have any cipher positions in this account. And the price is 15. So if I sold enough of my SATA position, then I could take a pretty aggressive cash secured put position and collect about 5% returns. So it doesn't really make sense for me to keep SATA hoping that this pumps over the next month back to 100 when I can see, and I don't need the whole amount. What would 16? That would give me 1,500. Yeah, I think that's right about perfect. So now I'm just going to start the wheel. Oh, I only had a partial fill. There we go. So I put up $1,500 or whatever, 1,550, collected $75. That's about a 5% guaranteed return for 1 week. So I like that. Refresh. Again, not financial advice. Cypher can go to file bankruptcy and go to zero tomorrow. And I will have kept my little 5% guaranteed return and of course lost the whole 1,500. So always be mindful of trade-offs. Oh, but you know what? I didn't realize it would do this in the cash account as well as the margin. So by selling a cash secured put, I kind of have to keep track of my own buying power, because this is not true. I don't have 1659 in buying power because 1550 is locked up in the cash secured portion. So in this account, I actually would have preferred to just buy the 100 shares and sell the covered call, and then this number would be accurately reflected. That's fine. It happens to me every time I forget and sell cash secured puts in this IRA. Did I look at everything else? Yep, Tesla, strategy. Yep, I'll take these off next week. All right, we are good. All right, again, this is like my smaller account that I just trade for funsies. And I'm using Cypher as a premium generator to buy these long positions in Tesla and strategy. So once I get a chance to roll this for a credit, then maybe I'll actually have some premiums to spend. It says that I've got $600, but I really do not. It looks like I'm break even on my cost basis for SATA here. But I should get paid 1% on this position, so that'll be nice. Plus, if this appreciates back up to par, that'll help as well. The preferreds are really a nice margin optimizing tool, because the cash secured puts are not being counted against my buying power. And then I'm kind of double dipping by buying stretch and SATA, which does use the buying power that the cash secured puts aren't, but not to the point that I'm actually paying any interest, because I'm still showing a positive cash balance. Again, this is not no risk, because if Cypher falls below 16, I would have to pony up 4 times that, which is what, $6,400, which I don't have. So I'm technically using margin without having to pay margin interest, but I'm still using it. So I have to keep these mental calculations in the back of my head, right? So 40 of these is only going to come up with $4,000. That's not 6,400. The value here is what, another $1,000. The value here is like another $500. So I've got about $5,000 worth of actual value, but I'm obligating $6,400 if Cypher goes down. So I am using margin in this account, but it's not being reflected here. So I'm not really paying any margin interest. So, do with that what you will, but it's kind of nice. All right, the 5K account, I should have something to roll here. Yep, my weekly Cypher call. Sold it for 70. I'll buy it back for 1. Keep the $69. Same day, different shit. People always want to know, like, what strikes do you sell, or what delta do you sell? And I really just don't care. Like, anywhere in the 20 to 40 delta are kind of in the sweet spot for me. Hermes Lux likes the 10 deltas. That would be up here. If Cypher runs to 20, this is amazing. You're going to gain 30% call away value, but the guaranteed return is only like $10. So again, there's no perfect strike, there's no perfect delta. It's just all about trade-offs. What do you want to capture the most? Potential value. If you're more worried about the potential value, then pick a higher strike. If you want guaranteed returns, then you choose a lower strike. My go-to is generally to try to capture at least a 10% call away value. So that would be what, $1.50 plus the price of 16, so around 17.50. So like anywhere up here is pretty reasonable. So I'm just gonna hit the 17. This is about 3% returns for 1 week. I think that's pretty cool. And these are not necessarily sustainable, right? If the premiums on Cypher dry up, then, you know, I might have to just sell and go looking for something else. Oh, come on. Nobody trying to give me a fill today? Let's do 0.55. Didn't the other one say high fill likelihood too? There we go. Okay. So in a second, this should refresh and my actual buying power, which is still not much. Yeah, 102. I could take the 102 and buy like one share or preferred, but like that's getting a little bit extreme. I think it is nice to have at least $100 or so to like be able to pay to roll things. Cypher and Wolf, these two positions I copy trade with my brother-in-law offline. I've also got this $12 CLSK put that I rolled out. I chose this not because I care about CLSK, but I had $1,200 worth of buying power. So I just went and found the miner that was like in the price range that I needed. It was not like I did diligence on the company. I really don't have any idea like what anything special about any of these mining positions, any of these different mining stocks. Couldn't tell you the difference. And so in this account, I'm kind of doing the same thing that I'm doing in my smaller Tasty Trade account, which is basically using the miners that I can afford to generate premium to take longer positions in Tesla or strategy that I can afford. With these two positions, it's either credit spreads or debit spreads. Credit spreads are done at the same DTE as cash secured puts and covered calls, approximately 45 DTE. And then if I want long exposure, debit spreads are going to be 6 months out, 12 months out, 2 years out, you know, something along those lines. And then, of course, I've got a couple hundred shares of Strive, which I will probably have to dump at a loss after the reverse merger, because if this is $20 a share, that would be like a third of this entire account if I tried to buy 100 shares of it. So I will probably be priced out of Strive in this account, and then maybe I'll just, maybe after the reverse split, I'll just take a position here somewhere, or maybe like the yeah, I could swap out the iron position or the Cypher position. Don't I have a Cypher position here? I just took one out, right? Yeah, I could swap out Cypher for where'd it go? Yeah, I could swap out Cypher for maybe a cash secured put in Strive if it's still hovering around $20 a share or whatever. All right, I think that's it. Let's check the chats. I think we're all caught up on chats as well. All right, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be good, y'all.